You wouldn't plant beans and expect to harvest bananas, right? So why do so many people keep pouring love, time, and spiritual awakening into relationships that only grow disrespect, confusion, and emotional fatigue? It sounds absurd, yet that's exactly what happens when you ignore the quiet messages from the unconscious mind and hope things will magically change. Carl Jung would say this isn't just a relationship problem. It's a depth psychology lesson revealing what's really happening inside the human psyche. Maybe you've felt it, that subtle shift inside when someone interrupts you, laughs at your dreams, or talks to you like your words don't matter. At first, you brush it off, but over time, something sacred within starts to dim. It's like your inner garden, the one where self-awareness, shadow work, and inner transformation should flourish, is slowly being trampled by people who never learned how to respect the soil. And somehow, you're the one left feeling wrong for noticing it. The wild part: these subtle violations don't just hurt your feelings, they reshape the meaning of life inside you. You start doubting your path, silencing your intuition, shrinking your light. Consciousness becomes blurry. The hero's journey pauses. The wounded healer inside tries to soothe everyone else while quietly bleeding. And before you realize it, your dreams, once vibrant and alive, begin sounding like strange stories someone else told you. The power of the mind turns against itself when disrespect is allowed to stay. But here's the twist. What if the problem isn't them, but the unseen patterns within you that keep tolerating what harms you? Jungian psychology teaches that persona and shadow, projection and perception, the collective unconscious, all influence the people you attract and the boundaries you protect. Sometimes, the shadow in relationships is simply revealing what still needs healing in you. And once you decode these symbols and meaning, everything changes, fast. So yes, you can't plant beans and expect bananas. But you can learn how to cultivate a different inner landscape, one where your energy is protected, your voice is heard, and yourself finally leads the journey. And as strange as it sounds, the moment you reclaim that authority, synchronicity explained begins appearing everywhere, guiding you to the people, places, and choices aligned with who you're becoming. Now, want to see how it all works? You often don't notice it at first, that strange tightening in your chest when someone talks over you, rolls their eyes, or quietly laughs at your dreams. It feels small, right? But Jungian psychology suggests every act of disrespect quietly echoes inside the unconscious mind, stirring dormant shadow work long before you consciously recognize what's happening. Your psyche registers these moments as subtle threats to self-awareness, rewriting inner narratives about your worth and safety. It's an invisible exchange. They give contempt, you receive doubt. Over time, this exchange becomes emotional alchemy in reverse. Confidence melts, a repressed self emerges, and the hero's journey is interrupted before it even begins. That tiny sting, it signals something sacred within you has been touched. When someone dismisses you, it's not merely rude behavior, it's symbolic, almost archetypal. Carl Jung would say these moments awaken forces tied to light and darkness, reminding you that relationships are mirrors shaped by the collective unconscious. This is where projection and perception start dancing clumsily together, like two kids arguing over who started what. Disrespect subtly tells your human psyche, your voice doesn't matter, and the unconscious mind stores that message like a secret file you never asked for. Suddenly, confidence leaks. The meaning of life feels foggier. Even dream interpretation becomes tinted with themes of silence, neglect, or confrontation, locked rooms, lost voices, fading colors. It's wild how a careless comment at dinner can turn the inner voice of the self into a whisper. You may brush it off. It's nothing. I'm fine. Yet your persona and shadow quietly disagree. Beneath the surface, Emotional awareness senses that boundary crossing has consequences. Imagine walking into a room where someone consistently mocks your ideas. Your body reacts before your mind does. Shoulders tighten, breath shortens, presence shrinks. That physical response is consciousness signaling misalignment. Depth psychology reveals that such repeated disrespect interrupts the individuation process, blocking natural inner transformation. To avoid making waves, you start shrinking, softening your voice, or editing your truth. Ironically, to keep peace around you, you sacrifice the peace within, slowly erasing pieces of your own story. Moments of disrespect often wake up old wounds, especially the wounded healer archetype. Suddenly, unhealed pain leaks through, memories of feeling unseen as a child, trying too hard to belong, or healing the inner child with bandages instead of real tenderness. You might overwork to please others, chasing love through performance. Shadow integration techniques remind you that these behaviors come from trauma, not truth. Emotional alchemy begins when you recognize the pattern. I stayed because I thought I deserved nothing more. That realization can hit like a plot twist in your hero's journey, uncomfortable yet strangely liberating. You begin to wonder, what if the disrespect you endured was never truly about you, but about their unconscious wounds spilling into your space? Everyday life becomes classroom and mirror. When you repeatedly tolerate disrespect, the unconscious draws conclusions, and not flattering ones. It slowly crafts a distorted belief. Your needs don't matter. This seeps into friendships, work dynamics, love, even psychological projection in relationships. You might notice a pattern, dating the same emotionally unavailable person again and again, because the shadow in relationships repeats the lesson until awareness arrives. Some people start journaling and witness synchronicity explained through subtle symbols and meaning, dreams of locked doors, dim rooms, disappearing voices, a book about self-awareness suddenly falling off a shelf, a conversation about boundaries at just the right moment. Each sign nudges you toward inner alchemy, toward reclaiming what was silently taken. And it leads to a curious, haunting question lingering beneath the surface. If disrespect harms you so deeply, what unseen forces are actually fueling it? When disrespect is obvious, it shows up as interruptions, harsh tone, mocking your dreams, or eye-rolling that clearly says, "You don't matter here." But the most dangerous form of disrespect isn't the loud one. It's the quiet version that hides in small gestures you almost miss. The friend who only calls when she needs something. The partner who jokes about your insecurities. The coworker who subtly takes credit for your ideas. Jungian psychology teaches that these behaviors come from the unconscious mind, where the shadow leaks through the persona and disrupts your self-awareness. Without realizing it, this begins to affect your inner transformation, planting self-doubt like seeds in the dark. These subtle acts aren't random. They come from unresolved wounds. Carl Jung believed that everything we repress eventually shows up outside us. So the chronic critic may be drowning in shame. The controlling partner may fear abandonment. The person who mocks your spiritual awakening may secretly feel stuck. These are psychological archetypes playing out in everyday life. The wounded who wound, the insecure who belittle, the empty who consume. It's the shadow in relationships asking to be seen. And while disrespect feels personal, it's often their repressed self desperately trying to stay hidden. When you recognize this, emotional alchemy begins. You stop internalizing their behavior and start seeing the deeper symbols and meaning behind it. Sometimes, the people closest to you resist your growth the most. You share your dreams, and they laugh. You mention healing the inner child, and they roll their eyes. You talk about Jungian psychology or depth psychology, and someone says, "That's weird stuff." But your pursuit of consciousness, of the individuation process, makes them uncomfortable because it exposes where they haven't grown. Your spiritual awakening becomes a mirror. The wounded healer inside them wants help, but doesn't know how to ask, so they criticize, distance, or undermine. This is projection and perception at work. They see in you what they cannot accept in themselves. Their reaction is not a reflection of your worth, but of their fear. These shadow behaviors often arrive disguised as microaggressions, silent treatment, curt replies, subtle competition, jokes that sting. No yelling, no dramatic scenes, just a slow drip of disrespect that weighs you down. And your body notices first: a tight stomach, heavy chest, low energy. Depth psychology reminds you that the body reads truth before the mind does. When this happens, it's not weakness. It's the inner voice of the self whispering, "Pay attention." This is how shadow work begins, through emotional awareness. You start recognizing patterns that once blended into the background and finally understand the power of the mind working behind the curtain. And when your rational brain tries to explain everything away, your dreams often reveal what you're not ready to say out loud. Jungian dream symbols show up like messages: locked doors, dark hallways, losing your voice, people taking something from you. Dream interpretation becomes a quiet guide, helping you see what your waking self avoids. Synchronicity explained emerges in strange coincidences: a video about boundaries, a quote about self-respect, a conversation that mirrors your feelings. Everything aligns to tell you, look closer. When you finally see these shadow behaviors clearly, another question naturally rises from the unconscious. What happens when these same behaviors appear not just in others, but in you? Tolerating disrespect is like leaving a small leak beneath your house. Barely noticeable at first, easy to ignore, yet slowly weakening the foundation of your human psyche. At the beginning, you let one rude comment slide, then another, telling yourself it's not worth making things awkward. But Jungian psychology teaches that every moment you silence your truth, something inside the unconscious mind takes note. Like a scribe recording debts you'll eventually have to pay. What started as patience becomes a slow erosion of self-awareness. Over time, your inner transformation stalls, and without even noticing, you begin trading your authenticity for momentary peace. Emotional alchemy slips into reverse, turning your bright potential into quiet suppression. Little by little, you start rearranging yourself to fit inside smaller spaces. You adjust your tone so others feel comfortable. You fold your dreams smaller so no one mocks them. You shrink your spiritual awakening, your interests in depth psychology, and even your fascination with Carl Jung because someone made it seem weird. It's as if your persona becomes a costume tailor, trimming your edges so you don't take up too much space. Meanwhile, your shadow waits backstage, frustrated and unheard. The individuation process becomes interrupted. The unconscious mind whispers, "This is not who you came here to be." But because you're trying so hard to keep things calm externally, you don't notice the internal storm gathering. This quiet self-abandonment spreads into your body. Your shoulders curl inward like protecting a flame from wind. Your jaw tightens as if holding back truths you never speak. The body becomes the diary where the unconscious writes its stories: stomach knots, restless nights, headaches without explanation. Jungian dream symbols reflect the same story. You try to shout, but no sound comes out. You search for a room that keeps shifting. Doors appear locked though you've never tried the handle. The inner voice of the self sends messages through dream interpretation, urging you to reclaim your power of the mind. Healing through awareness begins with honoring these whispers, the body telling truths the mouth refuses to. But there's an even deeper cost. When you tolerate disrespect, you begin teaching yourself that your needs are negotiable. The meaning of life becomes distorted. You start believing that closeness requires silence, or that love demands self-betrayal. You might even start performing the wounded healer, helping others, absorbing their pain, offering emotional awareness and guidance, yet never receiving the same care in return. You give warmth while accepting cold, reaching out while others barely reach back. This is the subtle tragedy of projection and perception. You learn to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. And somewhere within, your shadow asks, who protects you while you protect everyone else? Eventually, patterns begin repeating like déjà vu with a cruel sense of humor. You attract new people with the same shadow in relationships, different faces, same emotional script. Someone with narcissism and the unconscious sees your silence as permission. Someone disconnected from their own archetypes sees an easy place to drop their emotional debris. Synchronicity explained shows up everywhere. Same conversation, same disappointment, same emotional bill. You start to notice symbols and meaning in everything. Songs, quotes, even strangers' words, nudging you toward inner alchemy. This is your lesson. It's time. And eventually, a question begins forming, one that won't go away. If tolerating disrespect costs this much, how do you reclaim the inner authority you lost along the way? Carl Jung believed that reclaiming your inner authority begins when you stop outsourcing your value to other people's opinions. It's like realizing you've handed strangers the keys to your inner home, and then wondering why the rooms feel cold. Jungian psychology calls you back to the self, the deeper center beneath persona and shadow, where consciousness, spiritual awakening, and inner transformation take root. The unconscious mind isn't your enemy. It's the quiet mentor beneath the noise. When disrespect shakes you, that mentor whispers, return to your center. The individuation process is this returning, discovering that the meaning of life isn't found in being liked, but in being true. On Jung's path, you start noticing the subtle places where your authority slipped away, the yes you offered instead of a no, the silence you swallowed instead of a boundary. These small compromises shape your human psyche more powerfully than big betrayals. But reclaiming authority doesn't require a dramatic rebellion. Sometimes it's as simple as saying, actually, I'm not comfortable with that, or choosing to walk away from someone who feeds your repressed self. Symbols and meaning guide you, a locked door in a dream, a conversation that hits too close, a sudden sense of light and darkness inside your relationships. Each one is the unconscious mind nudging you toward a stronger spine. Jung often spoke of the hero's journey not as slaying dragons outside, but meeting the dragons within. Reclaiming inner authority means confronting the shadow, the part of you still asking permission to exist. Shadow work becomes less about fighting and more about listening. When you notice patterns, always seeking approval, avoiding conflict, choosing partners who challenge your worth, the shadow isn't punishing you. It's requesting integration. Emotional alchemy begins when you stop seeing your shadow as a villain and start seeing it as a wounded helper. It's like adopting a stray dog. It snarls at first, but beneath the teeth is only fear. Once acknowledged, it softens. This inner authority grows when you recognize your projections. That person who intimidates you, maybe they reflect a part of your potential you haven't claimed. That friend you envy might reveal a repressed dream. This is projection and perception, lenses through which you see the world. Jung and modern psychology agree that psychological archetypes appear everywhere. The guide, the trickster, the wounded healer, the unseen inner voice of the self. Understanding them gives you language for your own inner world. Suddenly, you're not just reacting, you're interpreting. Shadow integration techniques help you face discomfort without losing yourself. Journaling, dream interpretation, or even asking, what part of me is speaking right now, becomes a doorway back to consciousness. Reclaiming inner authority is not about domination, it's about alignment. It's lighting a candle inside your own house. You stop negotiating your worth and start embodying it. You learn that saying no isn't rejection, it's self-respect. You discover that spiritual awakening doesn't always look peaceful. Sometimes it looks like walking away from everything familiar. Synchronicity explained begins to appear like breadcrumbs, meeting the right mentor, finding a book at the perfect moment, receiving a message that feels written just for you. The alchemy of trauma begins turning old wounds into new wisdom. And just when this inner power starts stabilizing, a deeper question begins to surface. Once you reclaim your authority, how do you protect your energy in a world full of shadows? Protecting your energy is like tending a sacred garden inside the human psyche. You can't control the weather outside, the criticism, the projection, the shadow in relationships, but you can choose what grows within. Jungian psychology reminds you that consciousness isn't just awareness, it's stewardship. When someone disrespects you, they are essentially throwing weeds into your soil. The first strategy is simple. Stop pretending the weeds are flowers. Name the behavior. Notice how the unconscious mind reacts. Emotional awareness is your internal flashlight, revealing where energy leaks. Spiritual awakening begins when you realize inner transformation isn't about closing your heart, it's about protecting your roots. One of the most practical tools is boundary setting, not as a threat, but as a form of self-respect. Think of boundaries as the fence around your inner garden. Without them, anything walks in: criticism, manipulation, narcissism, and the unconscious. With them, you get to decide who waters your life and who drains it. A boundary can be as simple as saying, "I'm not available to talk about this right now," or unfollowing someone whose presence feels like emotional alchemy in reverse. Carl Jung believed that learning to say no is a milestone in the individuation process. It signals that the inner voice of the self is finally speaking louder than the persona others expect. Another strategy is learning to observe behavior without absorbing it. When someone projects their repressed self onto you, belittling your spiritual awakening, mocking your interest in Jungian psychology, or dismissing your dreams, remember, projection and perception reveal more about the projector than the target. Instead of reacting, try witnessing. It's like watching a storm through a window. You're aware of the thunder, but you don't run outside. This shift turns emotional alchemy into empowerment. You no longer carry the weight of others' unconscious fears. You see their shadow, recognize the psychological archetypes at play, and respond from self-awareness instead of defense. On a spiritual level, energy protection looks like ritual, not necessarily mystical, but intentional. Journaling helps you track patterns and decode the symbolism of light and dark in your days. Dream interpretation gives you access to Jungian dream symbols, revealing hidden meanings from the unconscious mind. Dreams where you create space, escape confinement, or meet inner guides. Meditation or breathwork offers space for inner alchemy to unfold. Even simple daily acts, walking in nature, spending time with people who honor you, creating something with your hands, remind your nervous system that safety exists. These are grounding tools that help the wounded healer rest, so the hero's journey can continue. Sometimes, protecting your energy requires leaving places where respect never grows. It's pruning, removing what no longer serves in order to thrive. This might look like leaving a job that feeds your repressed self, stepping away from friendships built on competition, or ending a relationship where light and darkness remain one-sided. Synchronicity explained often appears once you take courageous action. New people arrive, symbols show up, opportunities unfold. The meaning of life becomes clearer. You're not here to be drained, you're here to expand. Protecting your energy is not isolation, it's cultivation. And once you begin practicing these strategies, a deeper insight arrives quietly. Maybe the journey isn't just about protection, but about learning how to shine even brighter. At the end of the day, protecting your energy isn't about shutting people out. It's about choosing environments where your inner life can breathe. Jungian psychology teaches that the unconscious mind is always communicating through symbols, dreams, and subtle emotional signals. The question is, are you paying attention? Ask yourself, where have you tolerated disrespect, hoping kindness would change what someone refuses to see? Where have you quieted your inner voice of the self just to keep someone else comfortable? And who might you become if you followed the individuation process fully, embracing shadow integration, spiritual awakening, and emotional alchemy? This might be the moment everything shifts. Sometimes, the hero's journey begins with one bold choice. No more. Take a step today. Write about what hurts. Set a boundary. Give yourself permission to walk away from what shrinks you. The power of the mind expands when your actions align with your truth. And if you're ready to explore more about Carl Jung, Jungian psychology, and the deeper meaning of how to protect your energy from those who don't respect you, then make sure you subscribe and activate notifications so you never miss what comes next. Because your energy is sacred. And now, you know how to guard it.